Hello there, welcome back to another video. It's your boy Wraith Hoops. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Today I was asking for some suggestions in the comments of a recent community post, and we arrived at the topic of today's video, being John Collins, who has been surprisingly impressive for the majority of this season thus far, of course. And even though we would argue that he doesn't necessarily justify the contract that he's receiving, cough cough, $26.5 million, he's raised some interesting questions and some interesting discussion points. So we're going to talk about those today. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this one. So to set the stage, we have to remember that he is roughly 6'9", 225, 230 pounds. He's 27 years old, so he's right there in the range with Lauri Markkanen. And despite this, he has tried to prove that his contract was worthwhile. Now, for those that forgot, he ended up signing a contract that I believe was $125 million, guaranteed. So it was going to be a lot for him to sit there and justify. Now, in Atlanta, he had some really solid seasons where he was even at one point averaging 21.5 points and 10 rebounds. You know, progressively kept going through his career, things got a little bit ugly and they didn't get better. So he ended up getting dealt to the Utah Jazz, where last year he started the majority of his games, 66 out of his 68 games, playing about 28 minutes a night. And the issue in the beginning was his defensive woes. I remember that a lot of people had concerns with his shooting, but it came down to a hand injury that he had previously the year before. And ultimately he ended up riding the ship, but after the trade deadline, he ended up going back downhill, shooting a lot of games in the 20s and low 30s from three-point range. But overall in the season last year, he did end up having an overall rebound season. The year before, when he was with the Atlanta Hawks, he was shooting 29.5% on 3.4 attempts. Last year, on that same 3.4 attempts, he was shooting 37%, despite the dip at the end of the season, because before that, he was shooting closer to 39 or 40%. Now, he shot 53% from the field overall on 11 field goal attempts, and he was giving us 15 points, 8.5 rebounds, and an assist a game. But this season, across 10 games, which is a small sample size, but is still an eighth of the season, he's really coming out firing. And in the beginning, it seemed like it was a one-off thing. Oh, he's going to have some minutes here and there, but it's just to boost his trade value. It's just to make other teams pay attention to him. And while that was the case in the beginning, he just had an outing that was literally like none of the other ones that he's had in the Utah Jazz uniform. And by that, I mean against the Phoenix Suns in the first game of the NBA Cup, which, yes, the Utah Jazz did end up losing 120 to 112. He played 34 minutes, he had 29 points, 10 rebounds, with 4 of those being offensive. He also had 4 assists, which was tied for second on the team. And then he had 3 steals and a block. His box score plus minus was only a +1, and he did end up having 2 turnovers, but overall it was really good because he shot 12 of 19 from the field and 3 of 6 from 3, as well as 2 of 2 from the free throw line, which was a staple game for him. And considering the fact that he has a lot of games where he plays pretty solidly for the Utah Jazz, this was one of those games where it stood out because he put on what I would argue was a clinic, and he was extremely efficient in that facet, both shooting the ball, rebounding the ball, just everything across the board. And defensively, he wasn't egregious either. Now, across these 10 games, I would say that the worst thing that he's done is average about 2.6 turnovers per game, but nevertheless, he's been a pretty good number. He's only started in one of these games, but he's put together in 25.5 minutes of action, 17 points, 7.5 rebounds, 2.7 assists, which would be a career high if the season were to end today, or if you were to extrapolate this across an entire season. And then he also has 1.2 steals, 0.8 blocks, shooting 12.7 field goal attempts and hitting 52% of those, while also shooting 3.2 threes a game and hitting 37.5% of those. But I think 10 games is a really sizable sample size to work with when we're looking at the rest of the season and saying, what exactly can we expect from him? Now, the thing coming into this season was he didn't have any trade value. Nobody wanted John Collins because he's expected to be due $26 million this year. And to be honest, he's just not worth it in today's league. Yes, he has the ability to be a stretch big, but he's not necessarily the greatest rim protector. He's not known to be a premier shot blocker. He's not known to be an elite defensive player, an elite defensive wing. He moves his feet well in pick and roll situations, and with the Utah Jazz, he ended up getting tremendously better from when he first joined the team at the beginning of last season, but he's never been the elite lockdown blocksman. And you could sit there and say, okay, with the Atlanta Hawks, his rookie year, he had 1.1 blocks, and then in his junior year, he ended up having 1.6 and had a couple other years where he averaged about 1 block a game, but he hasn't eclipsed it with the Utah Jazz, and he just hasn't been the greatest overall on that side of the ball. But again, not too egregious. But at the same time, if you're going to pay somebody $26 million in today's league, you need to know exactly what their role is, and they have to be able to help you win. And because he hasn't been able to do that for the Utah Jazz, it puts him into a position where they need to trade him or offload him in some manner, because they are going with a rebuilding manner of just building the team. And they have a lot of young guys like your Taylor Hendricks, your Walker Kessler, your Kyle Filipowski, who is emerging this year. And even if you want to go as far as say Cody Williams, Larry Markkinen, and those guys, you have a lot of pieces that play forward or center minutes, and they need the opportunity to grow into their roles. Now, obviously, Lowry is the only cemented one out of the group, and Walker Kessler is looking really good right now, as well as Kyle Filipowski. But at the same time, you need to make sure that the young guys that deserve the minutes and need the minutes are quality getting minutes. And John Collins is kind of in the way of that. Nevertheless, he has been playing really, really well across the 10-game sample size, like I said, spearheaded by the 10th game performance against the Phoenix Suns. And would I sit here and say that he's going to have, 8 more games where he puts up 29 and 10? Probably not. But I could see 2 or 3. And if he continues to play like this, I think that there is a team that would be willing to take a little bit of a gamble and give him the opportunity to just play some quality ball. Or if we were to put together a package, even if we had to include some future draft picks just to offload him and send him somewhere else, I think that that would be in our best interest to do so, or at least having those conversations with other opposing GMs and front offices. Because at the end of the day, John Collins just doesn't fit exactly what the Utah Jazz want to do, and he probably won't be the perfect person for the championship window. And we recognize that despite him only being 27 years old. But the money behind it is the bigger issue over anything else, because even when his contract expires, if he's looking for something in the ballpark of something similar to what he's earned, it's not going to be on the table, and the Utah Jazz aren't going to want to pay him. But at the same time, if they can get some value out of having him on the roster and shipping him somewhere else, they would much rather do that, even if it comes out with a negligible return and some assets that end up expiring with contracts at the end of this year, and then you don't have to worry about them being on your books next year or the year after. Then that would be an ideal situation, because then you allow a lot of your young guys to get more substantial minutes, to get some more reasonable play, and have more of a burden placed upon their shoulders, so that you don't have guys like Bryce Sensabaugh, who should be having some more experience underneath their belt, instead just playing either 10 minutes to 14 minutes a game, or just not getting a touch on the court at all. Nevertheless, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think that John Collins will get traded this year? I think that there will be 2 to 4 substantial offers, and it will come down to whether or not Danny Ainge respects them enough to send him off, or if John Collins genuinely just wants to stay with the Utah Jazz, and that's why he's playing to this high degree, and why he's taking the fact that he was not given the opportunity to start out the season, because he said in a press conference before the season even started how much starting meant to him. Is that just the motivator behind his overall intensity and effort on the offensive side of the ball, rebounding, and then also defensively just being in his zones, understanding what he needs to do, and not being abysmal on that side of the floor? But like I said, let me know what you guys think about John Collins' play so far this season, whether or not you think he'll get traded, whether you think he'll have the opportunity to get traded, and then who else on this roster you think could be on the chopping block sooner than later, or just who looks good and who looks bad so far this year. Again, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Thank you for tuning in this video. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, and become a member or drop a donation to support the content. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.